Okay, so Dr. Antoinette, I would like to welcome you again to the Antonine University and to thank you for your time and your availability to share with us this presentation. We are all definitely looking forward to it, and we are sure that we will learn a lot of insightful tools to help us promote our mental health. I will leave it to you now to share whatever you wish to share with the attendees, and we will leave the questions till the end of the session.
Thank you, Jocelyn. So allow me to start with a feeling of gratitude for being part of this. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for coming and being there. What we're going to talk about today is something that has been showing a lot of interest, and it's a field of science that has been progressing immensely in the last decades. So it's actually a lot about epigenetics, and we're going to explore what does that mean. This has something that created a lot of curiosity for me at a personal level, because it was always a question between are we condemned with our genetic makeup, having explored the genome, or are we really having the choice to be part of what we choose to for our life to be like? So allow me to start with a little explanation of what is epigenetic. So epigenetic is, like the word indicates, is something which is beyond or above genes, or the code that we are destined to have. So when the genome, the human genome, was understood and the sequence was figured out, there was a tendency for scientists to believe that we are like this is a definite blueprint and there isn't much to be done about it. So, kind of a predestined condition.
Voilà, votre micro est activé.
And the difference between genetics and epigenetics, as we came later to understand, is that yes, true, the genes that we have decide the functions or our makeup, but we had a saying, and this is where gradually we started to understand that, in fact, the genetic behavior or the gene expression responds a lot to not predestined or blueprint or a designed genetic makeup, but a lot to acquired environmental influences. And we're going to explore today, because we're concerned more with epigenetics today, what are these influences that really make a lot of difference, and how can we really use this possibility? So, as we grow from conception to childhood to adulthood, we are being accompanied by what epigenetics is. So, let me tell you, like when we are in the womb, what differentiates cells and make one become a bone and another become a heart cell or other as a skin or nerve is epigenetic. And later on in life, when we are born, this capacity of uh, differentiation or adaptation or regulation, as we would rightly say, is an epigenetic faculty that is inherent in us, in our genes. So, had we not had this capacity of regulation, imagine that the genes would always behave the same in any condition, in any circumstances, no matter what we eat, no matter what the weather is. So, we lack this capacity of regulation. So, luckily, we came to understand this capacity of epigenetics. And we have two types of epigenetic behavior or pattern inherent in us, in our constitution. And one is endogenous, and as the name indicates, it's a cell-to-cell signaling. So this is where we develop and differentiate in the womb, but also even in adulthood. So let me give you an example. If we have a cell that is inflamed or a tissue that is inflamed, it is contagious, meaning this inflammation will spread into other cells because of signals or chemical sent or cytokines from one cell to the other. And this causes a regulation in other cells. But also we have an exogenous uh, uh, inherent also pattern, which means we respond also to our environment or any input or influence from outside, namely like nutrients. So when we eat, these nutrients dissociate and they become impressions on our genes. They cause a regulation. Also toxins, whether we eat them, drink them, or inhale them, smoking, carcinogens that are chemicals found also in pollutants, but also sometimes in um, like junk food or toxic food. So these two types of pattern or these two inherent patterns in us accompany us throughout our life. And in fact, these create a capacity for us to choose and be an active, contributor to our health or well-being. And we're going to see that this capacity of genetic regulation or is could be understood more and more now, and it's really aligned with nature. So if we come to understand simple natural laws and abide or align with them, we are in a very good position. So let me give you an example of what are the impressions that affect our genes and create an expression, which is an epigenetic regulation. So, and I'm going to speak about impressions because whatever is we're going to talk about, whether it's food, whether it's emotions, physical activity, whether it's pollutant, no matter what, these are impressions at the genes, and these impressions create a potential of an expression or a behavior, which is our health or wellness or mental health, not just physical. So, diet and nutrients are the major chemical ingredients that create impressions on our genes. And we're going to go, because I'm a naturopath, later on we're going to elaborate on this specifically. Obesity, and we know that fat denatures or create an irregularity or a negative expression on the genes. And let me tell you, like studies has been done on mice, and obese mice were more prone to cancer, for example, not just metabolic related diseases like cholesterol dyslipidemia or diabetes or coronary heart disease, not just that, even cancer. And studies have shown also with humans that fat on the belly especially increase the risk of breast cancer in women because it affects the genetic expression. Emotions are one of the major impressions on our genes, and especially now that we understand that our heart is not just a pump, it's a brain, it has a neurological system that communicates with the upper brain and create a new chemistry in the body. And this new chemistry in the blood, whether it's hormonal neurotransmitters, these chemicals are also impressions on our genes and create different expressions. Physical activity, we even know now that we have genes that deal with physical activity, and we're going to go into particularities here because although like we are the same up to 99.9%, 0.1% we differ. And this 0.1% of difference create a whole range of differences. So imagine what a 0.1% of DNA can do, how much information is there. Like, let me give you an example. If we stretch out all the DNA in our body, it will take us to the moon and come back. So imagine how much information is there and how much activity is happening all the time at the genetic level with each impression, with each breath, with each beat, with each food you eat. There is a whole range of activity going on. Tobacco and smoking has a great influence, a big one, on the genetic expression. Alcohol, environmental pollutants, and now there's plenty. Psychological stress, and we're going to talk a bit about that because stress changes hormonal behavior, neurotransmitters, nervous system activity, and all this create new impressions on the genes. Drugs, and I don't mean drug addictions, but only I mean medicinal drugs, because these can really denature our behavior, genetic behavior. But I would also notify here that even supplements, and there's a tendency now to just indulge in taking supplements, but supplements also could be a big risk because whatever the body doesn't need is going to be a tasking impression. And whatever an extreme we go from, like from one extreme to the other, whether too much or too little, is also a genetic risk. And working night shifts, and this could be a bit weird because let me tell you, most of the genetic repair happens at night. And if we miss sleeping at night, we're not just changing our biological clock, we're also minimizing the genetic repair because DNA, like every protein in the cell, is denatured or dies and is repaired. And this happens mostly at night. So globally, we can say that we have a genotype, a genetic makeup. This interacts with the environment and creates a phenotype, which is our current condition, what we are now at all levels. So, our topic today is about turning on and off genes because imagine in each cell we have around 20 to 25,000 genes, and all these cannot work all at once because some also are contradictory, but mostly they can be complementary. And it's amazing, it's incredible how nature have designed us in such a way where things are synchronized in a perfect manner. So the epigenetic changes help to determine which gene is on whenever needed, which one is off whenever is an obstacle or not needed. This regulation ensures that the proteins necessary for growth and proper functions are created. So I'll give you an example. What makes a muscle cell produce the right protein so that the muscle can do its work. And what makes a nerve cell creates the right protein so that this nerve can do its job. But also, what makes a cell produce the right protein to boost our immunity? And what makes a cell creates the right antioxidant to fight against oxidative stress? So all these are really indications of epigenetic behavior. So the body and each cell knows what is needed to secrete the right thing in the right moment. Having said so, provided really we are working or our cells are working in synchronicity and in a healthy manner. So I just need you to go through this with me so you understand, please, later on the importance of what we're going to be talking about. So just vaguely keep in mind that for a gene or a DNA to produce the right protein for us to continue, because proteins are the building blocks of cells. So we cannot survive without new cells, without protein. Okay? So every time our cells die, new cells are created, and these are proteins. So what happens for these proteins to be produced? So in the nucleus of the cell, we have the DNA, we give impressions, and first phase is a transcription. So there is the code, the information sent to be repeated through RNA messenger, which carries the information. This is translated in the ribosomes in the cell, where the proteins are created. So there is a transcription, translation, and coding. All right? So this process happens continuously. Like if we look at our genes, and we would see like a Christmas tree, which is, sparkling all the time, on and off, on and off. So this is an ongoing process. The regulation is where each cell does what's needed when it's needed, switching on certain genes, switching off certain genes, depending on the need of the body. It will sound maybe a bit complicated. It's going to get easier. It's just too difficult to explain to you later on the importance of the nutrients we're going to speak about. Have you not really got a glimpse of the process? So, in turning off and on the genes, three important things to note. A process of methylation. So this process of methylation is a natural process. This is the process that allows the gene to switch on and off. Histone modification, we're going to talk about it because as I said, the DNA is so long. So to fit into the body, we had to coil it around proteins. We look into that. And then the non-coding of RNA, how these information are translated into proteins. So this is methylation or suppression of gene expression, or demethylation, non-suppression, or transcription. So for example, I give you an example. Someone who smokes will obstruct methylation and cellular genetic expression. But once that person stops smoking, demethylation can happen again, and normal process can happen again, and this person can go back to normal. Because the difference between genetic and epigenetic is that genetic constitution is not reversible. We are what we are genetically, but the expression, the behavior or the regulation of the gene, that can change and is reversible. So we can create a risk by smoking, but we can reverse that risk if we stop smoking and develop good habits. And then we can turn off the harmful genes and turn on the repairing genes. So this is the histone cell where the DNA coil around, because otherwise they won't be, there isn't enough space in us to contain this. So if you look into methylation, we need factors, environmental factors that switch on or allow methylation or stop methylation, suppress the gene or express the gene. The same way here, the histone is so tight on the DNA that it cannot be read. So we need nutrients or impressions to loosen up the DNA so that it can be read and the RNA can take this reading to form new proteins. And this is why nutrients are very important, because some would turn off or turn on genes, and some would loosen up this coil of DNA, or some would tighten it. So allow it to be read or not. A non-coding of RNA is like the final phase where this RNA, all these information, gather amino acids in different sequences to create the needed protein. Because we know proteins are made of amino acids, small structures. So the information on the RNA lines up the amino acid and the sequence needed to form the protein we want and turn off and on the gene. So as we age, as we grow, our epigenetic behavior changes. And studies have shown that in childhood, they're more active, but as we grow, this faculty may decrease because of many, many factors. What are the factors that can really cause this weakness or this suppression of our epigenetic behavior? Infections. So, repetitive infections can weaken our capacity of regulation. Cancer, because it causes mutation. And one of the important factors in cancer is that even in our genes, we have a capacity, or we have an imprinted information that allows the cell to die. And we have nutrients that enhance this regulation. So the cell will do its job and then dies. And in cancer, we know that this goes wrong and then it keeps duplicating, replicating without dying. And we're going to see what are the nutrients that really even regulate this faculty. So nutrition during pregnancy has shown to be one of the major role-playing factor in epigenetics. I am now here, and the egg that got me here was in my mother's body. And this egg started, growing when my mom was in her mother's womb, which means I am an accumulation, a buildup of not genetic behavior, an epigenetic behavior. So whatever impressions my grandmother was eating, she gave to my mom, and my mom gave to me. And this is where nutrition plays an amazing role, especially in pregnancy. You know, like autism starts in the first phase in 20 days of gestation. So by the time we have recognized we are pregnant, there has already been something happening. So it's not about what I eat, also, it's about what my mother has eaten and my grandmother has eaten. So imagine now we are a third generation, maybe, who is eating junk. And because we age and we live long, we can't tell yet what are the consequences of these three generations of junk food eating, of carcinogens eating, of the pollution. But the good news is, because now we know about epigenetics and we can regulate this, we have a big chance. Same as nutrition is good, malnutrition creates deficiencies and then irregularity in gene expression or epigenetics. Carcinogens, and because I work a lot with cancer, I emphasize a lot about cancer and carcinogens, and now they've become a lot, not because the body cannot deal with cancer, it's because the body is loaded with impressions that are in favor of creating cancer. So how do we activate good genes? Okay, we've spoke a lot about the risks, the imbalances, but how do we activate these good genes? I go back to sleep because during sleep and deep sleep, a lot of the stress and toxins are excreted and allow the DNA, the genes, to repair and resume normal cellular activity. So sleep is a must. Meditation or prayer or gratitude, any practice that really reduces stress and the stress hormones and increases good hormones like DHEA or feeling good or serotonin. So all these are at the end of the day end up being impressions on our genes. So regulation of this, physical activity to release growth hormones, to reduce stress hormones, to enhance proper metabolism and assimilation, healthy emotions. And we know now that there are emotions that deplete us, create an imbalance at the nervous system level, at the immune level, at the hormonal level, and all these chemicals pool in the bloodstream and reach the cells, the gene, and either regulate or create an imbalance. Optimal nutrition, definitely. Grounding, and this is being really down to earth, practical, living the need of the moment, not being stressed, anxious. And this generation, unfortunately, goes through a lot of stress and lives a lot of anxiety. And perhaps they also have taken epigenetically our stress level. And now it's showing more. And some kind of psychotherapy. And now we cannot deny that mental health is a major part of well-being or health. And because we have better understanding, because we have better tools and faster tools, this has become real necessity. And because psychological stress or imbalances change brain chemistry, and when you change brain chemistry, you change physiology and genetic behavior. And nothing happens except at the genetic level. Every physiological behavior stems from a genetic impression or genetic information. So diet I'm going to elaborate here a bit. It's nature versus nurture, as some would put it. So it is genes versus epigenes. So whatever our genetic makeup is, our sequence, our DNA sequence, that we cannot change. But how the sequence expresses itself, that we can change because we can leave some gene dormant off and we can awaken others, put them on, depending on what we want to create. So this switching on and off, even if we have a genetic predisposition, this can stay dormant. It can stay off if we do not feed it. And we can awaken and feed other genes and turn them on with the right input. And nutrients work in two manners, directly or indirectly. For example, vitamin A or vitamin D work directly on the genes and create a response. So they can change methylation, change the histone, loosen up the DNA, and create proper information for protein formation or enzymes. Or some nutrients work indirectly. For example, if we eat enough fibers, and these fibers go into our intestine, and in the intestine, these fibers become like the prebiotic and prebiotics. And these prebiotics enhance the formation of B12. And B12 works directly on the genes. So this way, eating fiber did not really work directly on the genes, it worked indirectly. And this is very, very important in understanding our food or our nutrition pattern because not all nutrients work directly right, but nutrients together create the right environment as precursor for the right ingredients for good epigenetic pattern. And an example here, and I chose zinc because zinc is one of the most important minerals for genetic behavior. It accompanies us from gestation, in childhood, adulthood. It regulates genetic behavior. It also speeds up transcription and it also boosts our immunity. So it has an amazing role. And if you remember that during pandemic, there was a lot of emphasis on zinc for our immunity. And for that reason, zinc is one of the essential nutrients. And if we are to test, like now, we can test our epigenetic behavior. So we have like reduced. So if you want to go and test in the lab your genetic epigenetic behavior, it will be like thousands of them. But they were reduced to 7 or 8. Zinc is one, vitamin D is another one. Vitamin D affects or plays an important role in 1,000 genes. Imagine, that's a big range. Vitamin D contributes to immunity, contributes to muscle formation, to bone, to cartilage, to heart behavior. Contributes to methylation, to histone release of tension on the DNA. So it can switch on and off 1,000 genes, which is enormous. So this is why, as we understood more epigenetics, vitamin D became a major supplement, but also it is like part of a routine test now. And zinc is becoming the same. Folate are also important, like folic acid. And vitamin C. Vitamin C helps to repair up to 1/3 the genetic behavior. And this is why we've seen, like many therapies in cancer, use high doses of vitamin C. But again, we have to be careful because too much is a bit dangerous sometimes. So we need to regulate. And we need to also understand the particularity of each person. Although 99.9% we are the same, the 0.1% of difference is a lot. And because we have been subject to different environments and our body behaves differently, our regulation and the needs our body requires are different and are different also at certain times. So minerals in general are our foundation for the nervous system, but also for genetic expression. So let me give you an example. Going back to zinc, zinc can penetrate the nucleus, reach the DNA, unfold the information, and allow this transcription to reach the RNA. So this is where the zinc is important. Yes, we globally say for immunity, for heart, health, but this is where its function comes from its capacity of reaching the gene, unfolding the information, and speeding up transcription. Resveratrol, we've all heard about resveratrol or red wine or berries. So why is it important? Why does it help repair damaged optic nerve cells? Why does it help prevent breast cancer or even treatment of breast cancer? Why is it so important as an antioxidant to reduce oxidative stress? All these are true only because resveratrol can repair damage at the gene level. It can reverse damage. Same thing with B12. B12 is one of the most important regulators as one of the B complex vitamins. It plays indirect and direct role. It flourishes, it helps to flourish the good bacteria, and it is a precursor byproduct of microbiome in the intestine, but it also acts directly on the gene by allowing right methylation, by unfolding the histone tightness of the DNA around the histone, by also being part of the protein transcript or coding. Essential amino acids. We know that in the body we can make some amino acids protein. There are those which we call essential because we need to take them from food. So unless we take these 8 amino acids from food, our body cannot produce the right proteins, even if we have proper methylation, even if we have the right coding, non-coding. If we don't have the right amino acids, we cannot make these proteins. Omega-3, which is an antioxidant, which acts unlike other, lipids like trans fatty acids, which are oxidative to the gene. Omega-3 help repair our genes. And growth hormones, of course, unlike the stress hormones, which are constructive and which are also precursors for proper metabolism, for good enzymatic production. So, what are the negative turn on? So, what are the negative ingredients or food that turn on the wrong genes or suppress the good genes. Sugar, we've heard a lot about sugar. I'm sure every one of you now knows that white sugar, or even a lot of fructose is damaging for health. Sugar is an ingredient that not just lowers immunity stemming from the genetic level, it also affects brain genes and damages a lot of brain genes that are responsible for concentration, for memory, for regulation. Um, so, sugar is one of the really basic nutrients that we would want to avoid because it affects our mental health and it also affects our physiology. Trans fatty acids, which act as oxidants and induces oxidative stress. And mind you that our genes are protein, so even our genes are subject to damage, to inflammation. And we have genes, of course, that are designed for repair. But if such genes are damaged, our capacity for repair diminishes. Heavy metals, and there you have no idea the amount of heavy metals we are subject to in everything, in air, in water, in food. But luckily, the body has a natural mechanism for eliminating it through sweat, for example. But imagine that we take a lot of such toxins or heavy metals and we lead a sedative life, stressful life, bitter emotionally, and we don't sweat. So this, I don't want to give you a dark, impression. It isn't that, but it is true that we are really exploiting our amazing constitution. And hopefully, what I really intend to say is that all these toxins and heavy metals we are subject to, yes, they are hazardous, they are threatening, but we know that we can regulate. Had we been just genetic, that this damage is irreversible, it would have been really catastrophic. But what I mean to say is look into this, but the good news is we can regulate, we can repair, and we can change. So there is an amazing range of flexibility and a capacity to reverse it all and recreate, a new blueprint. Pollutants as toxins, smoking, stress hormones, unlike, growth hormones, they change the whole chemistry of the body. They interfere with metabolism, with assimilation, with absorption, with availability of nutrients. So don't undermine the stress we are really subject to and how difficult this is for the system to deal with. So can genes be repaired? Yes, obviously we have said this, that genes are always being repaired continuously. The same way that my skin is not the same skin I had a month ago. My muscles are not the same I had a year ago. Uh, our genes are always being repaired. But we have also genes that are in charge of this repair. So we need to preserve this because, as I said earlier, once these are damaged, the capacity of repair diminishes. And one of the vitamins that we don't talk a lot about, it's niacin or B3, is a very special and very unique vitamin that contributes in so many ways to DNA or genetic repair. It helps in the synthesis of DNA, it helps in the repair of the DNA, and it helps in the cell death. Because as I said, the cell has a set lifespan and needs to die at the end and to regenerate new cells. So niacin, now more and more we're exploring how important it is, and soon it will become like a routine test, testing the niacin level in our body to see our capacity of epigenetics. So medicine is shifting now. It's not about dealing with crisis. It's not about giving drugs. And now, because we know we don't respond to the drug the same way, it's about finding the particularity of us and boosting or helping the epigenetic faculty of the body for the body to regulate and regenerate and resume health. So, if we're gonna just give a list of good food, okay, that helps genetic repair and helps the on and off of the right gene, would say lemon, avocados, fatty fish, persimmons, strawberry, broccoli, celery, but not just celery. I would say also the green, all green leafy vegetables for the green and for the fiber, kale, apples, and all these help protect, you know, the DNA, but with, I mean, reasonable doses. Always extremes is a bit risky. Too much, too little is risky. For example, a lot of methylation is risky. Although we want methylation, but too much can create depression, anxiety, mental illnesses. Even now, schizophrenia is a bit associated with that. A weak methylation, on the other hand, can create metabolic diseases such as dyslipidemia or cholesterol or triglyceride or diabetes. So we really need to be in balance. So moderation is the key. Lemon, although it is very good, but it can also be too stimulating. And one third of the DNA damage can be repaired only by lemon or the vitamin C and minerals in it. I come a bit to emotions because emotions, as I said, are now understood as major components in our being. Our emotions regulate our mental state. So these two brains communicate and regulate to reach that coherence. That coherence is optimal health. But there are toxic emotions, anxiety, frustration, resentment, anger, melancholy. All these toxic emotions change the brain chemistry and change the physiology. They harm our immunity. They imbalance our nervous system. They imbalance our hormones. And we're talking really now science. So emotions are not just a luxury, really. Emotions are fundamental for being good, feeling good, but also physiologically well. And stress, now we know people go to doctors and we're fed up with being told, oh, this is because of stress, or this is because of stress. But to a large extent, this is true, that stress can damage us enormously. And not just that, and studies have shown that, mice that are put in the lab and subject to stress, and I'm talking about mice, and in epigenetics, unfortunately, animals are our tools, because to study on human beings, it's going to take hundreds of years, whereas because the life of mice are much shorter, and they are similar to us genetically to a large extent. So we can say this. So mice that are subject to stress, okay, and triggered certain behavior, studies have shown that these behaviors continue with offsprings over generation, you know? And even we can say that with mice, a genetic trait or an epigenetic trait expression can go up to 14 generations. Imagine keeping the same genetic sequence. Genes are the same, but the epigenetic behavior we inherit up to 14 generations. So we really don't know what is going to be next, that we have now epigenetically regulated and changed. Trauma, for example, with which when kid is subject to a trauma, this creates an alteration and may not be genetic but epigenetic. And these traumas are inherited in the offsprings. So we, as we decide how to live emotionally and mentally and physically, we are really designing for the next generation.
We are relying on that generation.
Sorry.
On that generation.
Sorry. حدا يمكن فاتح Okay. So, as I said, science has shown that up to 14 generation, these epigenetic features or regulations or expressions can be manifested, shown. So this really gives us a lot of responsibility in a way, but a lot of freedom too, because we can change and we can change if only we really put enough effort. And all these changes end up to be for our well-being, in fact. So if we use these tools that science has, not that science knows it all, but it knows enough for us to be aligned, with nature, to reduce the stress and running God knows where, uh, have better emotions, enjoy being together, enjoy gratitude, enjoy appreciation, enjoy compassion and kindness, communicate this, and have a good lifestyle. I mean, respect our body, respect our genes, and feed them what they need and what they flourish with. And this is not a crime, actually. This is amazing. And if we can do this and be well, and let the new generations be well too, that would be great. And speaking of gratitude, I've always liked to talk or briefly mention Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's a biologist and who was a lot an inspiration to me, but also a milestone in the epigenetic journey, because long, long time ago, 30 years, he was teaching medicine in medical school, and he realized that it is very contradictory from his research to continue teaching what he used to teach about genetics, that genetics is not a definite answer. Epigenetics, our environment, our respond, our genetic response to environment is far more important than our genetic makeup. So all this belief that our genes are a definite, you know, a condition that dictates our life is not true. It might be the blueprint, but we can adjust the blueprint and we can even rewrite that. So whatever we think, we really manifest in our life. So our thoughts and mostly our subconscious, we're not aware of them. But once we become aware of our beliefs or our subconscious thoughts, it's not enough to be aware of them. It's good also to allow them to bring us into new habits, and habits new create new environment, and this new environment creates a new epigenetic expression, no matter what our genes are. And studies have shown that at least epigenetic determines 70% of our health condition. And our health or well-being is not just physical, it's more also of emotional, mental, and spiritual, and whatever each one of us understands in spiritual. So I thank you very much for joining me. I hope this has added something to you, this presentation, and at least created some curiosity or an inspiration. And we take it from here. If you have any questions that we can share, I'm willing to answer. If not, thank you for bearing with me 1 hour. I wish you all the best, a healthy life, and a well-being.
Thank you so much, Dr. Antoinette, for this lovely intervention. We actually have a question in the chat box. Ibrahim is asking if genes that have been modified as a result of stress can be restored to their original state after the healing process.
You mean gene expression, because it's not mutation, right? So if it's not mutation, unusually stress, yes, change gene expression. This is epic. Yes, it can be restored. But it depends also on the damage or on the acquired behavior. So the duration and the measures needed depend on each individual.
Okay, great. And he was also asking if do you recommend organic honey as an alternative for sugar?
It's better than sugar, but it's sugar. But
Okay.
it has some good effects, but also in moderation. Yeah.
Okay, great. I don't know if anyone else has a question. Okay, Dr. Antoinette, I would like to thank you again for your time. I will hopefully see you tomorrow in person during the official ceremony. You are joining us.
Yeah.
Great. So I will see you tomorrow. And everyone who is with us now can join us tomorrow for the official ceremony. We will start at 9 and we will have 3 very interesting interventions. I will also share a feedback survey in the chat box if you guys can take 1 minute to fill it in. And of course, Dr. Antoinette, I will share with you the answers once we receive them. We are receiving a lot of thank yous in the chat box. As
Thank
it
you.
was very lovely and they have really learned a lot. Thank you again. And that's it. Thank you so much, Dr. Antoinette.
Good
And I will
night.
hopefully see you tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you all for attending.